Hi, everyone. This is Lynn Crawford with Hope Dementia Support, and we have a wonderful panel with us this evening to talk about home care and placement needs. And I'd like for them to introduce themselves, and I'm just looking at my screen, so I'm going to start with Julie Williams. If you could tell us your name and what you do, and one thing that you wish everybody knew.
My name is Julie Williams, and I'm the owner of Home Instead. I just finished my 18th year in the industry, and I still have a passion for it. I still love it. Um, what do I wish people knew? That some of this aging is predictable. I wish people would understand that we can kind of give you an idea of what the picture looks like, and it can be predictable. It can be unpredictable, but the experts have an idea of how this goes.
Thank you. Ginger.
Hi, my name is Ginger Barnwell. I'm the home care manager at CDM Caregiving Services. I've been there 6 years, but I've been in this industry for about 16. Um, we offer home care and we also have an adult day center. One thing I actually really wish people would do is along the lines of what Julie is saying, but plan ahead. It is predictable. And if you know the course of aging, you can make plans ahead of time.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Joey.
Well, and excuse me. Well, and I'm Joey Yorchek. I am the owner of PNW Aging Specialty Services. So we are an aging support services company, and we offer in-home care, case management, and we also serve as folks' healthcare power of attorney. Let's see, I've been in the business for almost 20 years now, which apparently that means I'm getting older. So you're in the right spot. I'm in the right spot to be talking about aging and the proper supports that are out there. As you can see, we have a really nice panel of experts here tonight. So, one of the things that I think that Julie said and Ginger said already was planning. As an aging support services company, one of the things that we offer is the healthcare power of attorney side. So, I wish more people knew about that planning process and what that entails, in terms of knowing what your resources are, having your advance directive in place, having your power of attorneys in place. As Julie said, all of these things are predictable. And we would love to hear from most of you before you reach that point that you're having a crisis. And then we're sort of scrambling to fix what's going on. But so I think that is probably going to be the theme tonight is planning, and get your plans in place and make sure that you've got somebody there to advocate for you when a time comes that maybe you need a little extra support. You've got all that stuff lined up. As we all know it, get your ducks in a row.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Christina.
Quack, quack, Joey. I'm trying to get my ducks in a row. I'm Christina Hinksler, and I'm with First Choice Advisory Services. I'm a senior housing and care advisor. I am working on my 6th year in this role, and I'm grateful to have helped hundreds of families at this point in time. So it's wonderful to be here as a resource. I agree that planning ahead is important, and at the same time for placement, sometimes the best laid plans go crazy a little bit. And so you need somebody to help you walk through that process. And Sarah and I are both experts in this industry and can help families. And we offer a free service to help walk you through that process and to give you information and education about how things can be helpful and all those fun things. There you have it.
Thank you. Sarah.
My name's Sarah Sheets, and I'm the owner of Senior Living Locator. I am entering my 18th year in this industry. I am a housing specialist like Christina here in Clark County. And One of the things I wish people knew is that just by doing your research and educating yourself on what the options are out there doesn't commit you to anything. So as we kind of go through this theme throughout the night and you're talking about planning, don't feel like reaching out to one of us is committing you to anything. And that knowledge is power, and in a lot of these cases, comfort. So that you know what could come down the road. But if you have a plan that might change, it sometimes helps you sleep a little bit better at night.
Thank you, Sarah. So what I want our audience to know is that you can ask your questions via Q&A or by the chat, and feel free to do so. And while you are coming up with your questions and getting them written down, I have a couple of questions. So my first one is, so what happens if I want home care? What does that mean? Anybody can answer.
You got 3 people on the panel, Lynn, that all know the same answer.
Yeah.
Well, we'll
does it
see
mean?
about that.
What does it mean when you need home care?
Yeah, so if I want home care for whatever reason, and that's a good question, when might I want home care? So that's a very specific question. But then if I get home care, what does that mean? How many hours can I have? How much does it cost? All of those questions.
Okay. How about I'll take a stab at when do you need home care? I think sometimes it's sooner than people think. It really can be preventative. You know, 3 days a week, 4 hours a day is what the Veterans Association have kind of determined as a baseline for their veterans in terms of making sure that they're staying out of the hospital, getting their medications routinely, and having someone in the house every other day to make sure things are good. And it's worked for the Veterans Association in terms of keeping hospitalizations down. But sometimes people aren't ready to have somebody in their home, and it takes an event or an injury to make them more receptive to the idea. But it can be tailored to your needs, you know, depending on what days of the week you need help, if it's weekends or evenings or mornings. It all just depends on what your needs are. And that assessment would tell you if basically, I'm sure that we all do the same thing, do an assessment in the home, meet with the people that are going to be participating in the care and the person that we're going to be caring for, and develop that plan. And that's basically the directions for the caregiver while they're in the home. And it can be 4 hours, it can be 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. And I think that we're all looking for, we're all starting to recognize that, we all do the same things and we don't even really think about it. So we bathe ourselves, we dress. And of course those are some of the things that we start to look for, that we start to pay attention to, that we recognize that, hey, they're not able to really bathe themselves anymore. And they're having some struggles with putting on their shirt in the mornings. And I think that's when we really do start to say, hey, I think we should have somebody come out and do that assessment and just sort of see what's going on. And maybe, having some support services in there 2 to 3 times a week is going to help them, of course, stay safe and maintain that independence that maybe they've had all this time.
For CDM, we a lot of our clients are on a Medicaid service, so the state would do the assessment and send the referrals over to different agencies, and then we would do our own intake. But the state actually does the assessment for most, like 90% of our clients.
And of course, for Julie and I, right, as a private pay agency, yeah. We're going out, we're doing our own assessments, we're formulating those care plans and making sure, because like Julie says, they're all customizable. We can sort of customize them to meet each person's individual needs. And I think the sooner that you do start to recognize those signs that, hey, this person is struggling with these things, the sooner you get that home care in place, because then that again will help them maintain that independence.
So we have a question here from Stephanie. Is an assessment a good tool to help determine if placement is needed?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. If we go in the home and it's determined, it could be a budget reason, it could be a care reason as to why we can't provide the care. But if we can't do it, we're going to call Christina at First Choice or Sarah and say, hey, I met with this person and I don't think home care is the right place. Can you help out? And then,
Mhm.
yeah, so yeah, an assessment, a free assessment from a home care agency might end up with a referral to a placement agent.
Mhm.
That answers the question.
So does insurance pay for home care?
Long-term care insurance does, but Medicare does not at this point.
And how frequently do you see people with long-term care insurance?
I would say 30% of the clients I have probably have long-term care. I don't think it's necessary. I think you can plan financially without it. And sometimes it's expensive and you don't end up using it because you pass away before the benefits are needed, or yeah, so I don't think people should feel bad if they don't have it. But if you're employed now in the state, you are working towards it, getting it, because the state has a long-term care benefit.
Mhm. And of course, there's other benefits like the workman comp. So of course, like labor and industries, people who have had like personal injuries that might need some care. That's another type of, as we call, insurance. It's not really insurance, but that is another form of a benefit that we as a private agency accept, because we don't end up having a Medicaid contract like CBM does.
And what's the typical, how much does it cost?
For us, it depends on the level of care. But it starts at $40 an hour, but I say kind of, if you break it into, minimal care where 12 hours a week, you're about 2,000 a month. That would just be an average. But
Mhm.
that gives you an idea of,
Go ahead.
you have somebody in the home every other day, basically, for 2,000 a month for 4 hours a day. And a lot can get done with 4 hours. You can make meals in advance. You want to make sure if you do hire a caregiver that they're using their time well. But make a meal, they could take them to a doctor's appointment, they could do a shower, all of that in 4 hours.
Mhm.
Well, that's another really good thing to know, is what exactly do the caregivers do when they come into your home? And what don't they do?
It's easier to say what they don't do, probably.
I was going to say, yeah, they don't scrub the moss off your roof, all right?
Yep. They don't do that. They don't get up on high ladders. Yeah.
Cannot get on their hands and knees to clean.
Yeah, they're not going up on that ladder to clean that ceiling fan that happens to be 20 feet up because you've got a vaulted ceiling. We obviously, as we go into it, we're always, I always tell people, like, we will do as much as we can to support you, but safety always comes first. And our people are priority. And I know you've got your needs and the things that you need taken care of, but obviously, as someone who's pretty involved in the community, hey, you need somebody to come out and clean your ceiling fan, I'm going to refer you over. And so I think it's the same with home care. I mean, I think that we all know that, hey, it's not necessarily the most inexpensive cost each month, but it's well worth what it can, as long as that the care that's needed is fairly minimal. And I think that when those needs start to become more intensive, that's when those costs start to become more. And that's where I think that's when we start talking to people like Sarah and like Christina, because a lot of those other types of long-term care settings are definitely more predictable. in terms of cost structure and the services that they sort of bundle together with the package that you get when you move into, say, like a long-term care setting.
So if people need to have medical type stuff, such as dressing changes, catheter changes, medications, insulin, et cetera, is that something that your organizations can manage? Do your caregivers provide those things?
I can speak for CDM. That would be considered much more home health based. And CDM primarily does in-home care. So there's a long list of things medically we cannot do. We cannot change wet bandages. We have some caregivers that are nurse delegated to be able to assist with medication management, but they cannot perform certain duties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because under Washington law, I mean, we're considered a non-medical agency. So there's a big restriction to what we can and can't do.
So
Yeah.
when you say that some caregivers are nurse delegated, not just because you're a caregiver doesn't mean that you're nurse delegated and can do these things.
Correct.
If you're delegated. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's where I have the differentiation in my levels of care. So if you need a nurse delegated caregiver, it's going to cost a little bit more. It just is, and that's the way it works. But then we contract a nurse that comes in and trains the caregiver specifically to the client and the client's needs. And it could be insulin, and it could be administering medications, but that has to be done under that nurse delegation piece.
And of course, there's the training and the experience that goes into obtaining the proper certifications to be nurse delegated. So there's like a core delegation program that they go through, and then for agencies like what Julie's talking about that also can do more of that diabetes management. There's the core delegation, there's the diabetes delegation, so that allows us to have caregivers that are considered delegable. I think the struggle that I've ran into as an agency is, as a non-medical agency, the type of caregivers that we do bring on, when someone approaches us with a situation like that, where they're needing more of that higher level of care, I think that's where, for me, I've noticed a change in the level of experience with caregivers. And that it has more to do with, okay, you've gone through and you have your core, you've got your diabetes, but if I'm being honest, as an owner, as an administrator, do I feel comfortable letting you be delegated for some of these serious tasks that a nurse will come in and I know that the oversight of what is being trained on is on the nurse, and it's up to the nurse to decide if that caregiver meets the criteria to be delegated. But I think that's been probably the biggest struggle, is we offer those delegation services, but the level of expertise and experience that our caregivers happen to have, it just doesn't meet that level that I would feel comfortable with moving forward with those delegable tasks. And that's just a trend that I've noticed in the last few years of when we're bringing on new caregivers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So some more questions. What does a new client interview look like? What happens and how soon do services start?
I can answer it. It basically we go through a questionnaire. Usually we meet with the family and ask questions like their birth date and medical conditions and mental health conditions and toileting, and get a baseline kind of where you're at physically and emotionally, and then start to put in place those pieces. And services can start the same day, if we've got staffing and we can manage to go out and get that assessment done that day. I did that for Christina on Sunday last week. So it can happen. It doesn't always work out, but yeah.
That's a really good question. Since COVID, I knew that there was a great challenge in actually getting and retaining caregivers. All of a sudden, they all disappeared. Has that changed? Are things better?
Can I speak to that? We have seen an upswing. It's definitely I think Joey and I have talked about this many times, that COVID has been a strain on caregiving agencies. And there's no idea why. I have no answer to that.
They have some theories.
We have some theories, but yeah. But we've now finally had a little bit of an upswing for caregivers and hiring. But, it's sort of a yo-yo effect. You hire 5 and then 3 of them move on to something else. So we don't really grow our caregiving staff the way we would like. I feel personally, in talking to our director, it will take years to bounce back from this.
Yeah.
Sure. And the reality is too that we're more and more folks are getting to a point where they're going to need assistance with those activities of daily living, right? And so we're all doing the best that we can to try to bring on quality caregivers and offer all those support services, and things have definitely changed quite a bit since COVID.
You brought up a good point, though, Ginger. What does the caregiver training look like?
If you're not currently credentialed, you have 75 hours. We put them through home care aid training. And we have a partnership with SEIU, and, they do 5 hours before they're allowed in a client's home. And then they go to classes for basic training for 70 hours. And at that point, once they've completed all their classes, there's a 120-day deadline to do that. Then they are notified, Department of Health notifies for testing for Prometric. And then if they test their skills and their basic, then they can become credentialed. But CDM, pays for all of those things.
So is that similar for the agencies that do not have a Medicaid contract?
It's a little different on my end.
Same.
I do pay for their training through a different organization that has the same home care aid training, but it's just a different platform, is my guess. But,
Yeah, and I'll say with us, we do offer most of the people that come on board have already obtained their credential, or they're already enrolled in some sort of schooling. But we of course do the same, where we're offering caregivers are required to have the 12 continuing ed credits each year to maintain that license with the Department of Health. So one of the things that we do is we help make sure that they maintain those 12 continuing ed credits. And then of course, like, we have launched an in-person hands-on training that we've been able to utilize the CLT Care Academy. So we've been able to get out there, and we're doing quarterly trainings now where, those programs are great. The CNA program's great. Those classes are great. Some of the online courses are great. But, after we get comfortable, we all do it. We all start to kind of like get a little loosey about things. So, so one of the things that I think is really important is to make sure that we have just that continuing ongoing in-person training, hands-on, making sure that they know how to properly transfer somebody, how to do pericare, how to give a bed bath. Some of these things that we do in the school, and we go through school for it, but then we haven't done a bed bath in 5 years. I recently picked up a shift, and I tell you, it was it was a really, really great refresher for me. Don't get me wrong, but there were definitely moments of really pulling deep to remember that CNA school and going, okay, I do remember this chapter. I remember her talking about it. So So I think that's one of the things that we do the best that we can as agencies to just make sure that we have that ongoing training for our carers. Because of course we want nothing other than for them to be successful.
Okay, thank you. So, are your employees licensed and bonded?
Yes. They are. They're all employees, they're licensed, bonded, insured, and we pay their workers' comp. So if they're injured in the home, it's on us, not on the family.
Yeah, and one thing you'll see, maybe Julie, you'll chime in on this is. I think this question comes up a lot is the question of, are they licensed and bonded? And let's talk about bonded. So I think that, one of the things as an agency, I know we carry a fairly large uh, general liability policy. So, of course, the same if anything were to happen. But I think bonded, I think that tends to be more specific to other types of industries. And I'm just being completely honest, I don't really know the answer to that.
I believe that they are bonded in the sense that that they're attached to the company's policy.
Sure.
So that if something happens, then they would be covered if the client decided to sue them.
That's
Or-
definitely it for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which is,
Okay.
but again, I know that question comes up a lot for folks where they do ask that question, and I would say, well, I mean, we're not really bonded, but we do carry a fairly large liability policy. All the caregivers are covered under that policy, and of course, if something were to happen, they would definitely be covered.
I was thinking of one of our group members whose husband constantly is accusing their caregiver of stealing.
Yes.
So, yeah,
That can be a concern with dementia for sure. So we
sure.
always say minimize the opportunity as much as possible if you've got dementia, because the last thing we want is our caregivers to feel like they're a thief when they weren't, and it was just a misplacement. And then just reduce the risk in general. I always tell clients, don't brag about your coin collection.
Yep. Well, definitely during that assessment, right? I mean, that's where we're saying, well, if you have valuables, you should probably secure them. Because again, that's like you're saying, is reduce that risk, mitigate that risk of it even coming up. And I think that's certainly, again, that's a lot of the reason why there's a benefit working with an agency is that we do have that insurance and we are protecting you, where you're not always going to have that same protection if you're utilizing private caregivers.
Yeah.
So, Joey, a specific question from you. Do you not use delegated nurses, or do you just prefer not to? I was confused a bit by that last answer.
Well, sorry if that was confusing. I mean, we do have to use a nurse that is able to delegate caregivers. There's really no way around it. So yes, we use a delegating nurse. I think in the past we've used someone like Amanda Bellis. I think everybody is quite familiar with Amanda. She's fantastic. But yes, she has the license to delegate caregivers who happen to have their certifications. But like I said, for us, it just really has not come up all that often lately, where people are necessarily looking to have that higher level of care, with something like diabetes management or, some of the other tasks that we can do under that nurse.
Okay. Does home care count toward Medicaid spin down?
Yes.
Yeah, any sort of contribution towards cost of care as you're spending down will count. So
It
don't-
does. One thing that I would say that Christina can probably chime into though is, and we might get into this a little bit more when we're talking about placement in Medicaid, is just being aware of your time frame. So how long those funds will last, because what becomes a challenge is when people, I'm a big proponent of staying home as long as you can, but I know Christina and I have both seen a number of times where people will stay home so long and spend so much of their assets on in-home care and then need to move to a higher level of care and then not have the funds to reach a Medicaid spend down period in a long-term care facility. And I'm hoping we'll get into a little bit more of that later, but just kind of being aware of the full picture if you are looking at spending down to Medicaid, whether that be at home or in a community.
I that's really important because I talk to clients about that as well, because there are a benefit to spending down in an assisted living that maybe they would offer you that bed beyond your finances. So you'll be able to stay at that facility if you spent 2 years there prior. With
And the same is possible for adult family homes. And like Sarah mentioned, we're both here to consult. So if you are wondering about the financial situation that you're in, whether you're in-home care or looking for placement or neither, you're just curious, call us so that we can help coach you, because it is really hard where we're sitting to hear on the other line what you didn't know. And now here we are in a crisis trying to support you to find the right match with the funds that you do have. So Sarah and I really can help coach you through and help you figure out what your best next step is.
So I think that's again the theme, coming back to planning. And again, talking about, that's probably a great thing to talk to, say, someone like an elder law attorney that has a background in Medicaid planning, as well as someone like Joshua Potts, who has done annual presentations on that Medicaid spend down and what that should look like. And obviously he would be a great resource for something like that.
And the same can be said. Sometimes Christina and I will get phone calls where someone says, I need to move into an assisted living because I need to spend Medicaid. But when you get into that conversation, you realize they just need a couple hours of help a couple times a week. And then we say, actually, it would be a bigger financial benefit to you to use in-home care for a while, as long as that, will work safely. So.
Yep.
So I've been running through the home care questions, but here's one that popped up in the middle. And that is, by any chance, do you guys do placement in adult family homes?
Yes, we do.
And
Nope.
Many times. Those three do not, but Sarah and I know all about that. Yes.
Yeah,
So-
those are your pros.
So we will talk about that. How do you establish advanced directives with individuals with dementia or developmental delay if they don't understand? Or is it up to the family or the POA?
That is a very complicated question. Being honest, I think that's again where we utilize resources like elder law attorneys to make those kinds of determinations. Determining capacity is not something that I can necessarily do when it comes to preparing legal documents like an advance directive. So I think that's again sort of the theme, is to try to get all these documents secured early on, while you do still maintain capacity. I'm not saying that it's impossible to execute a directive, or say, even in a situation where someone has dementia and they have designated a healthcare power of attorney, it is possible. It just becomes very complicated and somewhat complex, especially depending on where they are in the stage of dementia. So I hope that is a sufficient answer.
Follow up with Joey directly.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, again, I've been in that situation. We have been successful where we've had a client with dementia. We were able to execute a healthcare power of attorney because it was basically a transition from one to the other. She had dementia, but again, capacity is, and when you start talking about the law and the statutes that regulate power of attorneys and what that all looks like, I am not an attorney. I should play one on TV.
All right, I have a few more questions related to home care, and then we'll get to the placement stuff. Got a lot of placement questions as well. So can someone help me understand my long-term care policy and what it will do and when?
I think we've all gotten really good at translating and figuring out how to access and make claims on the long-term care insurance benefits. That's certainly something that we do as an agency is we work with the family to help access those benefits, make sure that we're following all the criteria that they set forth, and helping them to actually access those benefits. I can't say I'm necessarily an expert at reading like 20-page contracts and terms and all the fine print. But again, there's a lot of information usually within the policy that'll define what the terms are and how we can help access those. And again, sort of bring, say, invoices or care logs that need to then be submitted to the long-term care insurance companies to make sure that those benefits are getting paid out.
There
Julie?
there are things that are similar in contracts, like there's an elimination period in a lot of the long-term care policies that you have to pay out of pocket for 90 days. Could be 30, it could be 0, it could be 90. And sometimes, sorry about my dog. Sometimes it's a surprise that they're having to fork over a few $1,000s out of pocket before the insurance kicks in. So that's something but that's called an elimination period. And then for benefits to be kicked in, there's a couple of criteria. You need help. You need to have help with bathing or toileting, dressing, transferring,
Some sort of ADL.
some sort of what we call an activity of daily living. And if you don't need help with that, you may not benefit from the policy, but it could have a dementia clause in it too, where if you have dementia that is disrupting your daily life, you could qualify based on that, even though you physically don't qualify for it. So that's what I've learned about those
So
policies.
we have an addendum to that question. It says, for example, can we use long-term care to live together in a senior living facility?
I think again, it depends on the terms of the policy itself. Usually the policy is going to cover one individual and you would have to have separate policies to pay for pay for each individual. But I guess it's very possible that depending on cost of care and what it costs for a second person to live in the same room as you, and depending on what the policy pays out each month, it's a possibility that you may end up being able to get away with not paying anything out of pocket or just having a small payment each month. Good question.
Typically, you can use your long-term care policy for nursing home, assisted living, adult family home care.
Yeah, but again, that policy is typically good for one person, not
Not two, correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Although I know we have caregivers that help a client and they make lunch for him and his spouse will eat it, and I don't charge him anymore.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, if you're already at helping them make lunch, why not just make lunch for everybody?
So what about giving regular medications? We're back to that delegation thing again. Can caregivers give regular meds?
I think it depends on level of medication. I mean, most of the stuff we do is medication reminders. So we're just saying, hey, this is the family, the responsible party has said they need to take meds at 10 and 2. Here are the medications. Make sure they take them. And then, of course, if we get to the point where clients are unable to put medication in their own mouth or say like administer some form of medication on their skin, so we always say on or in the body, then that's when we do have to have a nurse come in and talk about nurse delegation.
Okay. What do you mean by Medicaid spin down?
Not touching that one.
Christina, do you want to take
Okay,
that? Or do you
I
want me to?
can, yes. So in general, when somebody moves into an assisted living community or an adult family home or a memory care, there are certain communities in Clark County and abound that may have a Medicaid contract. So one of those might require a 2-year spend down. What that means is that you are paying privately for your care in your room for the 2 years, month to month. And when you get to the end of that time, you've met their criteria for Medicaid. So when your funds are diminished, when you run out of money, if you need care and you have low resources, you should be eligible for Medicaid. Then what that means is that Medicaid will pay for your time to stay there. You will have a portion of your Social Security that you pay towards that community that you're at, and then Medicaid covers the rest of it. So that is very short, very nutshell-y. Sarah, did I miss anything?
No, I just want to reiterate because you said this, but it does get really confusing that there's two pieces to the what I call the Medicaid puzzle. You have to meet both requirements. One, you have to meet whatever community you're living in, whether that be an adult family home or assisted living. You have to meet their Medicaid spend down requirement, like the 2-year example, and you have to meet the state's financial requirement. And sometimes people think it's one or the other.
Right.
But you have to meet both. And that's something that when we're having the conversation about placement that Christina and I talk to you about, and we help you figure out what that timing looks like to help you meet both.
Right. So someone might reach out to us and they're independent. They don't need any care. But when we're talking about the funds, we see that like there's a concern here for a long term. That person may not be eligible for Medicaid. They could spend through their money and not have money, meet that criteria, but they don't need any care. And now we're in a pickle because they don't meet the criteria for Medicaid. So Sarah and I are great at be able to talk through. Every scenario is different, and like lots everyone's different. Thank you, Sarah.
So because she introduced herself, I'll introduce her, and it's good to hear from you, Liska. This is Liska McNally, who is a music therapist and a care manager with Aging Advisors. She says, this is a wonderful panel. I have a question, mostly for Christina and Sarah. I'm wondering if you have experience successfully moving folks who are lifelong smokers, heavy drinkers, or have other well-established lifestyle reasons would have difficulty moving into long-term care communities. Can you speak to how that transition would be navigated?
I think that both Sarah and I have honest conversations with families or even the individual themselves about what's going on and what their barriers are, and trying to let them know about our experience. So you're asking for us to give you, how did that transition happen? And there's so many, so many to pull from. Smoking can happen in assisted living. Not every community has a smoke shack where that's, covered and they could do that. If alcohol is an issue, not every community is dry and sober. So we would be wanting to be looking at communities that don't offer happy hour or that kind of a thing. Same with adult family homes. Some adult family homes may allow smoking. It's a needle in the haystack to try to find that kind of a thing because everybody wants to be healthy and well and not having secondhand smoke, or they have oxygen tanks and that kind of thing. So it is not just easy. We are doing a lot of digging and researching and talking to a lot of people to try to help people find the right match based on whatever the situation is that's presented to us. Is that fair, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that includes sometimes calling each other and saying, okay, I've got one that I'm just having a challenge finding the right place. Have you dealt with a similar situation? And kind of bouncing that off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it is doable,
possible.
but it is more challenging, and we do ask for more patience. It doesn't usually happen, overnight.
I think that's a challenge for you guys, but also for, if I think for us too, is, sadly, those are sometimes barriers that are hard to get, say, care in, because if, say, like a client smokes in their home, it's really difficult to find caregivers who are interested in working a full shift in somebody's house when they're just sitting there smoking. So unfortunately, I think those are also barriers when it comes to placement or home care. And
comment here. Some adult family homes charge up to $10,000 a month. What's happening or should happen to justify that cost? It makes it very difficult for many to afford.
Well, one, whether you're going into an adult family home or an assisted living or a memory care, your rate should be based on your care level. Each place can determine what they're going to charge for that care level, but you would have an assessment done that then would correlate with what they say the rates meet that care level. I know some places, whether it be a community or an adult family home, that if they have a shorter Medicaid spend down, so if they're willing to take Medicaid after 6 months or 8 months, they might charge more upfront. So having that conversation with them, and some it's what they offer, you know, if they are spraying lavender on your pillow with a chocolate every night and doing kind of more of this concierge, you know, service, then that might be how they're justifying it. So it would really vary, but it should correlate with care needs.
And I think Sarah and I have a pretty good pulse on what the rates are out there. And so when we're talking with families and giving them information in the beginning, like, here's what I'm seeing right now. The typical cost for an adult family home range being from this to this, depending on your level of care. So I have a situation right now where the family is really adamant that they want to pay X amount. And they've already gotten feedback from other adult family homes, a couple $1,000s more. And so our conversation today was, okay, now that we have the assessment, so in the state of Washington, if you're going to move into an adult family home, you have to have a third-party nurse assessment. That costs money to the family, but it's really a great tool because it is neutral and it's documenting what is the care need. So when we share that with adult family homes, they have an opportunity to look at that, review it, and then give pricing based on what they believe the care needs to be. So because Sarah and I get around in all the most appropriate ways and know who is out there, if we see something outside of that, that will cause us to have concern as well and to help guide you to find, like, to figure out what's that about? Did we miss something? Why is it higher? Did we, you know, what's going on with that? But in general, I think we're pretty spot on about what we think the care should fall based on what the family has shared with us. And then sometimes there's a surprise in terms of when the assessment lands, more is discovered that maybe the family didn't feel like that was, you know, it's not that they were holding back, but just it's more a conversation about what's going on. So all that together makes that cost. So in this situation that I'm working with this family, I said, okay, we've got the assessment. Let me share it with some homes and get some feedback and to see whether or not your idea of the cost is reasonable based on the care needs. So yes, 10,000 feels really high, but it really depends on what is being provided. Do they night care? That will raise it. If you need to have awake staff at night, or you need, or there's difficult behaviors, or there's just one-on-one care needed, things that kind of kick that up a little bit.
And the
And I
other
think
thing too that I, you know, tend to caution people on, if the care is coming in too low at first, I get nervous sometimes, and I'll have conversations with the provider about whether you're going to move in and then a month or two later they go, because they really wanted you to move in, and then they're going to increase it on you.
Yeah, we don't want that
you're
either.
already living there, and we don't want that. So we, you know, Christine and I both really keep a pulse on that too. And so we help you have that conversation. Why would my rate go up? And some homes will say, no, this is it. This is where I cap out at. You won't go up here.
And that's our role too, is to help you families talk with these providers about what does this encompass. So if it's $10,000, what does that really mean? What am I buying? What am I getting for that? So that we can support you to have that conversation.
I think to put it in perspective, I mean, if you're talking about that kind of oversight and support. I mean, if you're looking at something like 24-hour care with, say, home care,
Mhm,
I mean, you
mhm.
really are looking at upwards of $20,000+ every month.
$26,000 is in-home care for 24 hours. About.
So I think that's where, earlier kind of talking about, like, we're really a great fit for, a lot of situations. And obviously I'm a huge advocate of in-home care and keeping people at home as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, we're talking about $10,000. It could be more.
Mhm.
So here's a question. How do I know the progressive stages? I'm at a point with my partner, good days and days when I feel I'm living alone with all I have to do at this time, as he is not able to do a lot.
That seems like a question for
Lynn
you,
question.
Lynn.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lynn. How do you know, Lynn?
Yeah,
Well,
we're progressive stages of dementia, I assume.
I'm assuming that we're talking about dementia, but one of the things that I would highly recommend, and they're not at the table today, is contacting the Agency on Aging and Disabilities, because if you have a case manager through Aging and Disabilities, they come out and they ask you what it is that you are doing every day, not what they're doing, but what you are doing every day. And that gives a really good idea of what kind of support that you need. And even if that is home care support for that additional care, or if it means that it's time to place someone. We have frequent conversations in our support groups, which is why this is such a popular topic, as to, okay, what is it we need? Do we need home care? Is it time to consider placement? Those kind of questions related to the amount of care that they're providing every day and the fact that they get zero respite.
And we've seen the care partners decline in health because they're giving everything they can to care for their partner. And so in many ways, they're caring for their loved one by making a decision to bring in-home care so that they can have a break. They're caring for their loved one to make a placement so that they can get the care they need that is beyond what maybe they're able to do anymore, physically or mentally,
Well, what's the statistics, like over 53 million unpaid family caregivers? That, of course, then we're talking about burnout and, I mean, all kinds of emotional and mental health issues.
That's right.
Yeah. Billions of dollars of unpaid care.
And now it's crazy because now we're starting to talk about trillions of dollars. I mean, not like today, but here in, like, what, 20 years or something, we're starting to talk about how it's going to cost trillions of dollars, which is just.
Was it 2050?
Yeah, I think it's 2050. It's just.
Yeah. So, well, that's depressing.
It
So
is.
Thanks, Joey.
We'll go back to our
Joey.
questions.
But that's why we're here, because we can do better.
We can
as
plan.
professionals, we can help you. We can do better than this.
So here is a question. What is the Medicaid threshold now?
Well, it depends if you're single or you're married. This is where referring to elder law to get the most accurate, but what I tell people in general, if you're single, I use 2,000 as the number. But there are ways that it could be more than that. So you could have more money than that and still be eligible. Not helpful, sorry.
Well, and I think
I know,
That's helpful.
Joshua Pops, who's done the presentation for Hope, and I think if I remember correctly, it's back on Hope's Facebook page somewhere. I think the video maybe.
Actually, we do have a recording of his January presentation where he talked exactly about what the thresholds are, and in fact, there are slides that show them. So
Okay.
if you go to our YouTube page, which is Hope Dementia Support, and look at January, you will see that with the specific numbers for the state of Washington is what we're talking about.
and And I found that the agency area on aging has also been, if you contact them, they can be very helpful as well. Because again, there's so many different programs to tap into as well. I actually just had this come up recently where it was, I have a senior who also has DDA, so he's sort of eligible kind of for these programs. And so she's asking me all these questions about DDA programs, and I'm going, well, if I'm being honest, he's like on the long-term care senior side. So a lot of the benefits that he gets access to have more to do with that side of things. And so it's, again, there's so many complex things that sort of go into all these different things that then just, again, being able to access those resources like Joshua Pops or AdSwap.
I guess I would like to ask you guys, simply because it comes up frequently and people are so shocked, and that has to do with the military aid and attendance. And is that something that you guys discuss with people? Let them know that it's available? We're constantly reminding people, oh, you're a veteran? Have you looked into? And the answer is, what's that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always let them know about that. Ask them if they served and let them know that they could have benefits.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So back to our questions. And this is back to the thing about how much it costs in the adult family home. Isn't adult family homes required to have 24-hour supervision or a caregiver present?
They are, but their caregiver can sleep at night and wake up as needed for an emergency. And the home is allowed, they have to provide a disclosure of services when somebody moves in to state what they're willing to do, whether they have awake care or not. So if you move into a home that does not have 24-hour awake staff, meaning they're up all night and can tend to your needs, 2 times or 10 times throughout the night, if you choose a home that has a caregiver that sleeps, then they can say they can no longer meet your care needs if your loved one is then getting up more frequently at night. I don't know if you want to add to that, Christina.
Well, and I don't know about, I'm sure Julie and with Homestead and CDM, do you guys do where we at night, we don't have, our caregivers also don't sleep. So they are awake for the full shift.
Yeah, we don't do snooze shifts anymore.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we actually do not do overnight shifts any longer.
Yeah. Okay. But again, I think there's, that's a situation where, depending on that person's individual need,
Right.
maybe you need somebody who's paying attention at night and providing some supervision. So that might be that scenario where you have that home care situation where just the night shifts are covered, but then you've kind of have, then during the day, maybe you're taking care of it. That's something that doesn't end up working out.
Ginger, does CDM do overnight shifts?
No. We don't
Okay.
do overnight. Yeah, the latest shifts we are now doing, I think, 11 o'clock. We don't do any overnight care any longer.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
I think for CDM that ended a long time ago, because I've been there 6 years and we didn't provide overnight care then. So I know at some point we did, but we don't any longer.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say we do offer nights, but it depends on availability.
Well, going back to Medicaid spend down. What happens if you have no money to spend down?
Then you've already spent down.
Hooray, you're there.
So and of course what that means is, and this is something we hear all the time, is what happens if the family can't afford home care or placement.
Mhm.
And that's what we see, is people caring for their own loved one until they have ground themselves into under their shoe.
There are some places, mostly adult family homes, that will take people directly on Medicaid. It's just a matter of whether they have availability at the time that you're looking, and then whether it's, going to be the right fit for you. So Usually once you're on Medicaid, you would get a case manager and then they would help you do that. Now they do have huge caseloads. So when someone's in an emergency situation, it's, not always ideal. I know Christina and I both, if we have homes that we know will take straight Medicaid, even though we don't do official placement for Medicaid, we will pass on that information and just say, we happen to know this home. You can call and see if they have availability. So we'll try to guide you as best we can. So they're out there. It's a lot harder, and it's not always, you're not always getting to just pick where you want to go. It's sometimes unfortunately ends up being where you have to go.
Well, that was perfect because you just answered the question before I ask it. This one is, my mother-in-law has no money. Are there adult family homes or memory care facilities that will take Medicaid without the pay down requirement? So I think you answered that.
And I'd like to add one thing just as to help families. If you're working with a social worker and they send you to the state website with over 400 adult family homes, which is typically what happens, and it's overwhelming, and you start calling, the first thing an adult family home may ask is, what's the daily rate? So if you don't have that yet, you'll be better equipped to make sure you have your assessment from the state and your daily rate before you start making calls, because then it's a wasted effort. I know that Sarah has given, we consult with families around, if you're not on Medicaid, here's how you do this, here's what needs to happen, kind of lay the land out for you so that you can walk that path, and that we're here, on the standing by, ready to help coach you, but we are not allowed to be involved in the way that we'd like to, because we're working with private pay families, and that's the law, that's the state telling us no. But also we're like, we know how that feels on the other side, and overwhelming. So when we have an opportunity to give a name or support, we will share that information for the good of the order and not go to jail.
That's important.
Yeah.
Very.
I look great in orange, but please.
So the lady that had talked about her partner not being sure what her progressive, what was going on, she says she's at the beginning stages of her partner's dementia. So
Yeah.
once again, home care.
Well, and I think
placement.
she's also writing that she feels that she needs to contact someone to advise her further. So Sarah and I both are here. All the panelists are ready to take your call. Not right now today. We're on this,
Lovely. Lovely.
call one of us and we'll help guide you.
We also have the option for the adult day center for respite services.
That's a great option.
Yep.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then Ginger, I'd love it if you would describe the adult day center.
Okay.
So this question is the military aid and attendance only available to veterans with service-related injuries or needs, or is it available to all veterans regardless of service-related illness?
What I understand is you have to have served in the military during wartime, but you didn't have to be overseas. So it could be you were in the military when Vietnam was happening, but you didn't necessarily have to serve overseas. You could serve overseas, but it's just one day during wartime. If you served, then you probably could access those benefits. There's a financial thresholds like Medicaid, not as severe, but that's how it works.
That's my understanding as well. So thank you for
It's
that.
also a question on your Medicaid application. Medicaid is, if you have access to those benefits, Medicaid is going to want you to utilize those before you tap into Medicaid also. So I've seen sometimes where people don't realize that, and then they're in a little bit of a pickle because they've spent their cash and the aid and attendance is still kind of there. So and that's again where I think having all this information ahead of time and just getting the research and knowing what you qualify for and when, even if it's years off, is great to have.
One more here. Do these agencies provide respite care for the in-home caregiver? And if so, what does that cost per hour?
I would say that yes, we offer respite. Certainly, it again it ranges on really the person's individual needs, and how many hours they need. We of course we have a minimum of 4 hours per shift per week. And again, the rates, start anywhere from $39 and they go upwards, just depending. And again, it depends on if it's care for one person, it depends on if it's care for a couple. So it just, again, there's a lot of factors that change what that looks like. And again, the reality is that, and we were talking earlier about COVID and, the search for good quality caregivers. And what you need to have good quality caregivers is you need to be paying them good wages, and you need to be offering them those perks, the trainings, the things that they need to be successful. And so, of course, businesses like my own, we are, we charge what we charge to help offer that incentive to caregivers, so that we can provide that high standard quality care.
CDM offers respite care for private pay. It's $41. I always forget, 41.16 an hour, but we do a 2-hour minimum. I always have to look it up because
16?
it just changed.
Oh, sorry, I'm out. I can't afford 16. That's no, I could do 41.
41.16.
Well, and I can definitely vouch for the day center.
Yes.
I have a client that attends twice a week, and I don't know what he would do without that place.
Mhm.
Well, and that was a perfect segue into that question about the adult day center. So if you could describe that, Ginger, we would appreciate it.
Well, Lynn, you work in it sometimes, don't you? But it's full of joy. It's really great. They were open from Monday through Friday, 10 to 3. They do activities, they do art projects, they have music therapy. You can also, they do exercises. We have a nurse on staff if you need med management. It is full of joy. I work upstairs from there and all you hear is singing all day long. And, we take care of people from 18 all the way up to, I think, what, Lynn, 101, 102?
Well, I think he
What-
just had his 100th birthday.
100?
Yeah,
Was it the 100th? Okay.
yeah.
And they all range in, care needs. And we have caregivers actually staffed in the day center that if someone does need assistance in the restroom, we can provide that. We also have a chef that serves lunch once a day, 5 days a week, and snacks sometimes. Did I describe it okay, Lynn?
You described it really well. I think that joy is a good answer. If you watch those people get off the bus and come in the front door, that's what you see.
Mhm.
And
Joyful.
I see questions occasionally that make me think, well, and especially that respite question. That's what I really consider the day center to be respite.
Mhm.
And that is the opportunity for that care partner who is with them 24/7 to maybe take a nap or go and have their nails done or get their
Mhm.
hair done or go out to lunch,
Yeah.
those kind of things.
We have,
And
Lynn, we have these two ladies that take care of their spouses and they bring them to the day center and then they go out to lunch. And
is that perfect?
yeah, and then, when that first started, it's quite emotional when you're bringing your loved one, but they found each other and now they're very, very close ladies now. They're ladies at lunch.
Aw.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Elaine, that's kind of an answer. You're caring for your husband with dementia at home. You're able to manage, but you feel like you're drowning. You have long-term care insurance. Your husband doesn't want in-house care or to leave the home. Where do you start? Who on the panel should you call at this early stage?
I recommend starting in-home care and not telling him.
That it's that
Yeah, Just say
maybe
your
you're
friends-
needing help.
your friend's coming over to help. And because otherwise you could just have an endless argument and never win. And sometimes they just go along with it. That's the one thing with dementia. If you act like it's supposed to be happening, they're going to kind of go along. That's my recommendation. There's ways to go about it, and we can meet with you and strategize. That's
Well,
what.
my story, I have my own personal story with Home Instead, is that I had a caregiver come in to be with my husband so I could be gone. And when I got back, the caregiver said, well, he is convinced that I'm stealing from you. And he hated every minute that I was here. And so, of course, I thought, well, that's the end of that. And she says, oh, no, next time I'll come as your housekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she did, and everything was fine. So,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there are, again, I know one of the things I mentioned earlier that we do offer is the case management services. And so, I think the case management is kind of more of that consulting type role, to sort of help people understand all the things that are sort of involved. And is home care a good fit for you? Should you be talking to Sarah, Christina, talking about placement? Oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my mind. Well, maybe then CDM as respite, the day center, maybe you could do something like that just to give yourself a break. That's, I think, where we, and again, PNW Aging, I mean, that's where we could also be helpful as more of that consultant type role, to help navigate. And again, everybody else, of course, is a great resource as well.
So a couple other questions now about the day center. First of all, what does it cost?
I brought that with me because
Even
I'm the home care manager, so I don't run the day center, but I get to support it. It is now Lynn, tell me if I'm right, $17.50 an hour.
That is correct.
But they also accept Medicaid to SOA and FCSP. And that would be, you would apply through that with SWAD, or how do you call it now, Joey?
Oh,
Through the Area Agency on
Yes.
Aging and Disabilities.
and swoop.
Yeah, no acronyms here.
Yeah.
The day center is our pride and joy here in Vancouver. I can't talk about it enough. It was so important to me that day center, because it was almost going to go away 6 years ago. And I was like, this can't happen. It's one of the most affordable care services we have. And so that's what's great about this community. We all work together because we see where the need is. And so I got on board with the capital campaign and helped them get the funding to make that center. And boy, oh boy, it's just been amazing. It's packed to the gills, and we need space. We need another building.
We need thank you. We need more of this. Yeah, agreed.
We keep talking about another day center.
Yep.
That's
don't go getting our hopes up, Lynn.
It's gonna happen.
I hope so.
It will.
Before I die. Is the day center locked down so nobody can wander?
Correct. It is locked down and secure.
It absolutely is locked down and secure. And if I really have to go to the bathroom, my office is outside of the day center, and I don't have my little card to let me in, I'm in serious trouble. It's a very, very good lockdown system.
Yes.
So the other thing for people who are members of Hope to know that part of our, we have a Rays of Hope program. And part of our Rays of Hope program is that if people absolutely cannot afford to pay for the day center, then we will pay for a day a week. That's how important we feel that respite is. So
and not just the day center, correct?
Say that again.
The Rays of Hope. I mean, yes,
it's many things, but I was talking just about the day center.
I know, but I just want to make sure people knew it was not just for the day center respite.
No, you're so cool. A comment Washington has so much more in the way of resources than where we move from. The United States is not the easiest country to figure out what to do in elder care situations, but I'm grateful for the state of Washington. That's lovely.
Mhm.
Thank you, and you're not wrong.
I think
I mean,
And
we're
we're
really
really biased, but I think Clark County is the best in Washington for resources.
Well, I have a tendency to feel that way too. You know, I'm not right in there with all of these people that do this work, but what I can tell you is that I can ask any one of them, and if they don't have the answer, they'll refer me to one of their colleagues,
Mhm.
and I really appreciate that. So
Well-
there is no competition there.
No.
well, and what is it? The Columbia newspaper recently shared that article about, of course, their plans for aging, but that it's what 25% of the Clark County population is going to be over age 60. By like what 2030 or 2025 or something.
Yeah, it's
You know, that's the reality, is that yes, I mean, we all need each other,
Mhm.
because there's so many of us that need our help, that we have no other choice other than to be supportive of one another and make sure that people have access to what exists in this community.
so I have a handful of other questions. If you feel like you can answer one more question or two or
Yes.
three,
And it's by 2035, just FYI.
I'm all right.
I couldn't remember. I thought it was something like 2030, but I mean, the Columbian newspaper
Yeah,
that just
yeah,
posted about it
yeah.
a week ago or something.
Somebody just asked if we'd be posting contact information. We certainly will. I'll provide contact information for each one of these people who took the time out of their already busy day to join us in the evening. So thank you very much for that. So we have a few more minutes. Quickly, minimum shifts. I heard Ginger mention a 2-hour minimum.
Yes.
Is that common? Or does it vary? It varies among organizations.
I'm with Julie. I'm mirroring Julie.
So you guys are 4. Okay. What
Well,
are
and-
some challenges?
Can I have a follow-up question to the 2-hour? Is it also on the private pay side, or just is it Medicaid and private pay that you do the minimum to?
It just asks for a minimum shift.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 2 hours for both. Every once in a while we'll do a 1 hour for Medicaid, because it depends on the situation.
Yeah. No, and that's really helpful for me to even know, because again, I mean, it does come up where people need just the 2 hours, and there are not a lot of agencies that can staff a 2-hour shift, unless of course it's like, say, in a facility and you have 6 clients all in the same facility.
Yeah.
You know, you can sort of have that caregiver rotate through for those shorter shifts. Thank you.
What are some challenges that present themselves on a regular basis?
Challenges regarding what?
Regarding either in home care or in placement?
Well,
Go ahead, Julie.
home care, there's a lot of factors that go into getting the right caregiver in the home. So let's just say your first go around, it's not the right person, or you just didn't feel comfortable. And my recommendation is, if you're not looking forward to them coming, then it's not the right fit. You really need to look forward to that person. They need to be, filling the gaps that need to be filled, and doing it in a way that you're comfortable with them and they're comfortable with you. And so that's something that, so you might have to go through a couple caregivers before you feel like that's the right one. So I don't say just don't throw out the whole thing because you had a bad experience with one caregiver or it wasn't a good fit, because it really does make a difference.
Agreed.
So from a placement, what are the common challenges from your perspective?
there's challenges every day. And we just answer the phone and we try to help people manage them the best we can. I think both Sarah and I are transparent and really care about what we're doing and want to help people get to the right place. So whichever lane that is, we're helping guide in home care, placement, in whatever level that might be. I think that we've been lucky that we have families that are reaching out to us that are wanting the help and appreciative of our, knowledge base. And so that makes it easier to help offer support. Would you say?
Where I would say where it can go wrong is when you don't have someone to help you.
Yeah.
As you don't know what you don't know, and you could make a decision and move into a place that doesn't have the need, that doesn't,
I
won't
think
serve
there's,
you long term.
yeah,
And
thank you for
so,
that.
yeah,
Julie, you think you're spot on, because I think that there are people out there that think, well, why would I use a placement expert agent?
I'm just
And
gonna Google it.
yeah, I can just do this myself. And then what happens is they eventually call us and say, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I need your help. I have to get my mom out of here. So it's word of mouth, I think, by fire about why you would want to work with Sarah or with Christina.
Years ago, I thought I was really, really smart because I knew about the adult family home locator. And then I spent 2 days on the telephone talking to adult family homes before I finally found something that looked like it would work to me. And then I met some people that do placement. And absolutely, you need to have a placement agency help you. You have enough to do.
and I don't recommend the large companies like A Place for Mom, or because they don't do the same kind of work that Christina and Sarah do. They don't necessarily vet the local places, and they don't make that choice based on your real needs. It might be made on financial reasons. So I just think knowing and getting a good referral to someone that can help you with that is just a way better way to go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And that's when we're having those discussions, as we frequently do in our support groups, we strongly recommend that they use local agencies, not a national agency, because they don't know.
Well, we live here and we're in your community, and our reputation is important, and we want to be responsive.
And it's all such a personal thing, whether you're choosing to move someone into somewhere else or whether you're having somebody come into your home. It's so personalized. So there isn't a one size fits all for any of it. And I think sometimes people get so overwhelmed and they just kind of want that checklist of what am I supposed to do or how does this work? But it is such a personal thing and every scenario is different.
And there's so much of it that's a gut feeling. And families will ask me, well, how do I decide? And I say, well, if everything's equal, then how did you feel? Like your gut feeling about a certain place or not. And that's not really scientific, is it? That's not a checklist. So it's our role to help guide families through and talk through those situations to help you land where you feel comfortable.
So what are options in the home if you can't afford to private pay, but you're not eligible for Medicaid? Are there options? Julie Williams, did I just see a little chat thing?
I think
There's
that's
a
Hilarity for charity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hilarity for Charity is one
That
organization.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Well, they provide, it's started by Seth Rogen, the comedian, actor, movie maker. His wife's mother has dementia, or had, I don't know where she is in that journey right now, but they recognize, anybody in this field will recognize, we need more help, we need more resources, we need more dollars. And they came up with this Hilarity for Charity. So they raise funds, and the funds go to help with support groups and also respite care. So, it doesn't fund like Medicaid would until you no longer need it. it's an amount that they give you and you can use it. But it's an application that you can do online, I believe. So the link is in the chat.
That's
And
awesome.
I think and I think too, there's, unfortunately, there aren't a lot of options, right, for private pay versus Medicaid. But, I know we talked earlier about just making sure that you're trying to access the resources you might. So again, coming back to, are you a veteran? Well, there you might have some aid and attendance benefits that could help you out. One of the things that I've been hearing little rumors about is hopefully long-term, or I'm sorry, health insurance providers, that them talking more about adding in types of coverages that could potentially help pay for things like home care services. Because hopefully after, calculating the numbers, that they're starting to realize that they actually could be saving money. But instead they have not quite processed that. But I think that that's that direction that we need to go in, is that yes, there needs to be more access to having funds to pay for the kind of services that will help keep people out of the hospitals, will help prevent things like isolation and burnout. All these things that really are, I guess in my mind, and this is going to be a strong opinion, sort of destroying, destroying the country when it comes to how we care for our aging population, our most vulnerable.
Mhm.
There's a comment from someone that says, I'm a provider and sometimes we have vacancies, but referral will refuse to text or call back. I think some of them have preferences as in which home they placed. Comments, experiences?
When I'm talking with a family, the first thing I'm asking is about area of town. And I'm really working hard to fill that request and look where they're asking me to look. So today, actually, I was looking in Battleground for something very specific. And a couple providers that didn't have availability called their friends. And then my phone was ringing for people that are in Vancouver. And so when I said, I'm looking specifically, I'm trying to fill this request, and this is why I'm not going to refer to your house. So it's hard to know what's the storyline going on. So I'm sorry, Janet, if you're feeling like you may not be getting called back or referred to, but we are really working hard to do the match based on what the preferences and needs are for families. Sarah?
Yep, I would agree with that. And I think sometimes, there's a lot of adult family homes in Clark County, and I think that we're doing the best match for, both the resident and the home. And so there's things that we know about in the background where we might know it's not a good match. So I don't think it's because anybody's having any, specific
Favorites.
homes.
Yeah. Mhm. We try our best to know all of them. There's over 400. It's impossible for me to know all of them, but we know a very good amount of them to be able to draw from, so we can offer up what are the best options for your loved one.
And
Yeah, I
also
have one-
looking at things like what was your annual survey look like? What did, do you have any investigations, any of those things too? So we're keeping track of all of that.
One last question. This is a big one. What if I don't have a companion or family?
You need a healthcare power of attorney, call Joey. One.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's
Talk
tough.
with an attorney too. I mean, for
Mhm.
sure. Because it's really important that you have people in place to make decisions for you if you can't any longer. And a lot of people think that a power of attorney is for when you're dead, but oftentimes it comes into play well before you are. And so,
Almost the complete opposite.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
choosing the right person is important. They may be good with numbers, but they're not good with care, you know? So be thinking about that. And then I always recommend going and researching places ahead of time for yourself. So you'll know, you might be able to pick an adult family home that you would go to when you need to. And you would know the family already because you've already been there. That would kind of alleviate some worry about like what happens if. It's like, well, I know this place, I like it. I know this place, I like it, and it would be okay for me to go there if I needed to.
Yeah, we actually have a term for people like that. We call them adult orphans.
Yep.
And I think that there will be a need for far more than just a single organization in town that helps with those kind of things. And
Mhm.
unless you're just amazing like Joey is, but
Yeah. I mean,
I
we've
can
got
see that
that for
becoming more
sure.
of a challenge. Yeah. So you
But you're
guys,
right.
thank you so much. I feel like we have the tip of the iceberg, but you were hugely helpful and I really appreciate it. For everybody in the audience, this will be on YouTube probably by Friday. And so that you can watch it over and over again if you need to. And next month, we will be talking again about Medicaid and insurance by a Sheba expert from the Agency on Aging and Disabilities. So also remember, everyone, that there is a memory cafe tomorrow at the diner from 10 until 12. And if you've never been, they are really fun. So would love to have you there. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.